The film begins with an unsettling atmosphere, introducing Catherine, a translator hired to work on a mysterious text written by the deceased son of a wealthy woman. The son, described as a genius, left behind a cryptic manuscript in Swedish, a children's story. However, as Catherine delves into the translation, she discovers the text is not simply a story but something far more disturbing, filled with asmic writing and abstract, unreadable symbols. The tension builds as Catherine interacts with the grieving mother, who insists on the translation despite the linguistic impossibility. The house where she works is cloaked in a foreboding ambience, filled with shadows, strange sounds, and unexplained occurrences. The enigmatic manuscript. As Catherine spends more time with the manuscript, she begins to experience vivid and disturbing hallucinations. She sees fragments of the story come to life: a dense forest, a hunter, a spider, and a mysterious maiden. Each vision is accompanied by unsettling noises, reverberating drum beats, and cryptic whispers, suggesting that the manuscript holds supernatural power. Catherine's dreams blur with reality, showing her hunted by unseen forces and trapped in looping, eerie scenarios. She grows paranoid, suspecting she is being followed or watched. The film uses haunting imagery of decaying settings, flowing water, and a growing sense of mold or corruption, symbolizing Catherine's psychological and moral decline. The story within the story. The children's story Catherine is translating tells of a hunter who encounters a beautiful maiden seeking refuge during a storm. The maiden brings prosperity to the hunter's life by weaving silk cloth to sell at the market. However, she forbids the hunter from entering her weaving room. One day, overcome by curiosity, the hunter breaks her rule and discovers the maiden is a spider, weaving silk from her own body. This revelation horrifies the hunter, and the maiden disappears, leaving behind a life-sized effigy of the hunter, woven from silk. The story mirrors Catherine's own unraveling psyche, as she begins to feel trapped in a similar web of secrets and fear. Unraveling the truth. As Catherine investigates further, she discovers the son's obsession with spiders and webs, reflected in his writings and art. The manuscript seems to bind Catherine's fate to that of the son, as she begins to experience strange physical changes and compulsions, like drawing spider-like patterns and muttering phrases from the story. The mother's behavior grows more erratic, oscillating between grieving and controlling, and she reveals dark secrets about her relationship with her son. She blames Catherine for not finishing the translation quickly enough, accusing her of disrespecting her son's genius. The climax, the effigy revealed. Catherine becomes desperate to escape, but the house seems to trap her. In the film's climax, Catherine enters a hidden room where she finds an effigy of herself made of silk and human hair, mirroring the story. The effigy pulses with a life of its own, and Catherine realizes she has become part of the cycle of the cursed manuscript. As the walls of reality crumble, Catherine confronts the mother, who admits to performing a ritual to bind her son's spirit into the manuscript, hoping to preserve his genius forever. The ritual, however, came at the cost of the son's sanity and life, and now it threatens Catherine's own existence. The interplay of psychological and supernatural horror. Effigy is a slow-burn psychological horror where the lines between reality and the supernatural blur. Catherine's descent into paranoia is mirrored by the house itself, which seems alive with malevolent intent. Doors creak and slam, walls decay, and shadows move independently, creating an ever-present sense of dread. The manuscript becomes a physical manifestation of Catherine's unraveling psyche. As she struggles to translate the incomprehensible text, her mental state deteriorates, reflected in her growing isolation and obsession. The film uses a mix of ambient noise, distorted voices, and chilling silences to heighten Catherine's vulnerability, making the audience question whether her experiences are supernatural or self-induced. Themes of grief and obsession. The mother's obsession with her son's genius and her refusal to accept his death drive the film's narrative. She is portrayed as both a tragic and menacing figure, whose grief has twisted into something dangerous. Her determination to immortalize her son through the manuscript leads to the events that ensnare Catherine. Grief is also explored through Catherine, whose own unresolved trauma becomes a conduit for the manuscript's influence. The film suggests that those consumed by grief or guilt are more susceptible to the manuscript's power, creating a chilling allegory for how unprocessed emotions can trap individuals in a web of despair. Symbolism and imagery. The film heavily employs symbolism, particularly around spiders and webs. Spiders represent creativity, patience, and danger, reflecting the duality of the son's genius and the curse he left behind. Webs are used as visual metaphors for entrapment, showing how characters become ensnared by their obsessions and fears. The effigy itself is a powerful symbol, representing the loss of identity and autonomy. By the end of the film, Catherine is not just a translator but a piece of the cursed story, her likeness preserved in silk as a warning to future victims. The role of the manuscript. The manuscript serves as the central antagonist, a cursed object that binds the living and the dead. Its asmic writing defies understanding, suggesting that its true purpose is not to be read but to ensnare. The more Catherine works on it, the deeper she becomes entangled in its curse, mirroring the fate of the son who created it. The story within the manuscript is itself a haunting allegory. The hunter's discovery of the Spider Maiden and her eventual departure reflect themes of trust, betrayal, and the consequences of curiosity. It also parallels Catherine's journey, as her curiosity about the manuscript leads to her undoing. Cinematic techniques. Directorial choices amplify the film's eerie atmosphere. The use of low lighting, tight framing, and slow camera movements creates a claustrophobic feeling, making the audience feel trapped alongside Catherine. The sound design plays a significant role, with unsettling noises like scratching, whispering, and the creaking of silk threads filling the silence. The transitions between Catherine's hallucinations and reality are seamless, often leaving the audience as disoriented as the protagonist. This lack of clear boundaries between the two realms enhances the film's psychological impact, making viewers question what is real. Interpretation of the ending. The ambiguous ending leaves much open to interpretation. Catherine's fate. The film does not explicitly show Catherine's death, but her disappearance suggests she has been absorbed into the curse. The effigy found in the hidden room implies that she has become part of the manuscript's cycle, her identity reduced to a symbol of the story's power. The mother's role. The mother's final moments, cradling the manuscript, suggest she has resigned herself to the curse. Her actions throughout the film indicate a willingness to sacrifice others to preserve her son's legacy, making her both a victim and a perpetrator of the story's horrors. The manuscript's curse. The film ends with the house decaying further, overtaken by webs and shadows, while faint whispers and scratching sounds persist. This suggests that the manuscript's curse remains active, waiting for its next victim. The effigy serves as a haunting reminder of the manuscript's power, ensuring that its story and its curse will continue. Grief as a central force. The film examines how grief can distort reality and lead to dangerous choices. The mother's obsessive devotion to her son's memory drives her to protect the manuscript at all costs, even as it consumes everyone around her. Her refusal to let go of her son's legacy creates a toxic environment, trapping Catherine in a cycle of despair and madness. Catherine's own unresolved grief and loneliness make her susceptible to the manuscript's influence. Her vulnerability becomes a key element of the story, highlighting how personal trauma can amplify external threats. Isolation and vulnerability. Isolation is a recurring motif in Effigy. Catherine is physically isolated in the decaying house, surrounded by silence and shadows. This isolation is mirrored emotionally, as she becomes estranged from her friends and colleagues during the translation process. The film portrays how isolation amplifies vulnerability, making Catherine an easy target for the manuscript's curse. The house itself acts as a character, its decaying walls and suffocating spaces reflecting Catherine's mental state. As the story progresses, the house seems to close in around her, symbolizing her inability to escape the manuscript's influence. Symbolism of the effigy. The effigy serves as a central symbol in the film, representing identity, memory, and sacrifice. In the manuscript's story, the effigy of the hunter is a haunting reminder of the maiden's betrayal and departure. In the film's narrative, the effigy of Catherine signifies her complete loss of self, consumed by the manuscript's curse. The effigy also ties into the theme of preservation. Both the mother and the manuscript seek to immortalize their victims, trapping them in a static, unchanging form. This symbolism is reinforced by the spider motif, as spiders preserve their prey in webs, much like the manuscript preserves its victims as effigies. Character arcs. Catherine. Catherine begins the story as a competent translator but is quickly overwhelmed by the manuscript's complexity and the psychological toll it takes. Her arc is one of descent, as she moves from skepticism to obsession, ultimately losing herself in the process. Catherine's journey highlights the dangers of intellectual hubris and emotional vulnerability. The mother. The mother's character is both pitiable and sinister. Her grief for her son has driven her to extremes, leading her to value the manuscript above all else. While her actions are motivated by love, they result in destruction and loss for everyone around her. The mother's arc is one of self-destruction, as her refusal to let go of the past ensures the curse's continuation. The son. Though deceased, the son's presence looms large over the film. His genius and madness are central to the manuscript's creation, and his story within the story mirrors the fate of those who engage with the text. The son's character serves as a warning about the dangers of unbridled creativity and the toll it can take on the artist and those around them. Conclusion: A Haunting Legacy. Effigy, 2024, is a masterful exploration of psychological and supernatural horror, weaving themes of grief, obsession, and identity into a chilling narrative. The film's ambiguous ending and layered symbolism leave viewers with lingering questions about the nature of the manuscript and the fates of its victims. Ultimately, the film suggests that some mysteries are better left unsolved and that the pursuit of understanding can come at a terrible cost. The story within the manuscript becomes a mirror for the film itself, challenging viewers to confront their own fears and curiosities while leaving them ensnared in its haunting web. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.